Today we're going to explore the life and times of the late Tina Turner. She's known as the queen of rock and roll, and for good reason. She was more than that, though, and I have to tell you, even before we get into this, that I enjoyed learning about her life story probably as much as I have enjoyed learning about anyone else's. She lived a remarkable life, and she overcame some remarkable challenges, and she ended up on top. She was born in November 1939 in Nutbush, Tennessee. Be interesting to know how many of you know where Nutbush, Tennessee is. She died, though, in 2023 in a little suburb outside of Zurich, Switzerland. She was, for all the energy, the power of her dancing and her singing, she was only 5 feet 4 inches tall. And her net worth, when she passed away, was estimated at $250 million. How do you get from Nutbush, Tennessee to Switzerland and from poverty to $250 million? Most of us, when we think of Tina Turner, remember that she was married to Ike Turner and that they had a very successful act. They, called it different things, but primarily it was called the Ike and Tina Turner Review. Some of you may remember when she left Ike and dared to strike out on her own for a solo career as an entertainer when she's in her 40s. Some of you may only remember her because of a particular song that she sang. She had so many that were incredible. RollingStone.com picked 9 that they considered to be her finest songs ever. So I thought we would start with looking at those. First one she recorded in 1960. It's called A Fool in Love. This is one where she solos and Ike and his band, the Kings of Rhythm, are backing her up. And it was really the first breakthrough hit that Ike and Tina Turner had. They got married 2 years later, 1962. The next big one was in 1966. It's called River Deep, Mountain High. It was written by Phil Spector, and he convinced Tina to record it for him. But interestingly enough, he refused to allow Ike Turner to be anywhere around the studio during the recording sessions. He would have nothing to do with him. Ike was an alcoholic, and Ike ultimately became a cocaine addict, and so it was a little difficult to have him around. Plus, she made Tina very nervous. The next one was 1973, and ironically, it's called Nutbush City Limits, and it's one that she writes, and it's in honor of her hometown, the little town in Tennessee where she was born. '71 brought the next one, and it was, frankly, it's my favorite. It's Proud Mary. This one was written by John Fogerty, and it was originally recorded by Creedence Clearwater Revival, but almost nobody remembers that they ever even sang it. That's because Tina's rendition of it was the one that once you hear it, you can't forget. She played with the timing of it. She started slow and then built it to a heavy rock and roll tempo at the end. It's dynamic. 4 years later, she recorded Acid Queen. It was sung by Tina, and it's because she played the character Acid Queen in the Who's rock opera, Tommy. This was the one that brought her the British audience. In 1978, 3 years after Acid Queen, Ike and Tina divorced. Then in 1983, Her next big hit and her first real big hit as a solo artist was Let's Stay Together. It's an Al Green classic, and it was the song that really kick-started her solo career when she needed it the most. In 1984, she, I think this one is probably my second most favorite of hers. She recorded What's Love Got to Do with It?
You must try to ignore that it means more than that. Oh, what's love got to do with it? What's love but a second hand?
She was 46 years old. Most thought she was well past her prime. How could she come out with these dynamo records? But she does. And this one, I think, proved that Tina had really only just begun. The next year, she did We Don't Need Another Hero. This one was the theme song for the movie Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, in which she again acted. This time she played the part of Aunt Entity, and it's a fabulous song. And then in 1989, she produced, sang, recorded The Best. It was already a fairly popular record that had been recorded by another artist, but she made it her own. And she did it by adding a key change, she put in a bridge, she added a saxophone solo, and she sang her heart out. And many of the music historians, looking at her whole body of work, consider The Best to be her best. In her spare time, she also wrote 3 books. 2 were autobiographies. 1 was a kind of a self-help book. The self-help book was the last one that she published. She published it in 2020. The title of it is Happiness Becomes You, a guide to changing your life for good. The other 2, the autobiographies, one was written in 1986. She titled it I, Tina. She had a ghostwriter with her, and it was adapted in 1993 into the film What's Love Got to Do with It? Very, very interesting piece. The one, though, that I chose to review with you is her last and second autobiography. She published it in 2018, and it's called Tina Turner, My Love Story. She wrote it with Deborah Davis and Dominic Wichman, and it was published by Penguin Random House in the United Kingdom. In an interview, Tina Turner told the New York Times this: I wanted to tell the whole story and get it right this time. I also wanted to make peace with my past, including Ike. That's why I picked this one, because the first one, I, Tina, talks about everything, but it doesn't reveal everything. And this second one, My Love Story, does. And I think it took years for her to get to the point that she could tell her love story. There had been so much written about her, most of it centered on her relationship with Ike Turner. I mean, they were Ike and Tina Turner. They were just, like Sonny and Cher. You always thought of them together. Journalists tended to focus on the marriage and the fact that she would leave him, but they pretty much ignored everything else about her life, even her career after Ike Turner. So she decided she needed to tell her whole story. In many ways, she lived 3 separate lifetimes: her childhood, her life with Ike, and then her life without Ike. My Love Story was written when she was in her late 70s. It chronicles her rise to success, which is what we would want to know about her, but it also gives her complete family history for the first time, and that's an important part of who she is. It's very unapologetic when it talks about the very abusive relationship she had with Ike Turner and how she found the courage finally to leave him. It speaks about her surprising conversion to Buddhism She became a Buddhist. And it also explains her relationship with the only man she ever truly loved. But let's go back to that question. How and when did Anna Mae Bullock from rural Tennessee become Tina Turner, also known as the Queen of Rock and Roll, with homes in Europe and the United States? As I was studying, reading about Tina Turner's childhood, the word that kept coming to mind for me was survival. Because for Tina Turner, Anna Mae, her childhood was an act of survival. Today, if you go to Nutbush, Tennessee, you see a big sign that says, "Welcome to Nutbush, Tennessee, birthplace of Tina Turner." It's become a tourist attraction. And part of the reason it has is because Tina never forgot it. There is now a Tina Turner Museum there. And to get to it, you have to drive along the Tina Turner Highway. So Nutbush didn't forget her either. She put Nutbush on the map with that song that she wrote and recorded back in '73. Remember, Nutbush City Limits? This is a map that shows you where Memphis, Tennessee is, and it shows then little tiny Nutbush a little north and to the east of it, not too far from the Mississippi River. This is cotton country in Mississippi, and this is where she grew up. In May of 2023, when Tina Turner passed away, the people of Nutbush gathered and held an official memorial service for the woman they knew as Anna Mae Bullock. And during that gathering, several of them remembered knowing her as a child. At that gathering, in the New York Times, there was this quote. It said, "Robbie Jarrett Ewing remembered misbehaving as a baby with Anna Mae Bullock within the pews of the Woodlawn Missionary Baptist Church and attempting to cover it from their grandmothers. We just did whatever we could without the old women looking at us," Miss Ewing mentioned. So Tina was, as a child, a little frisky, perhaps. This is a picture of her first school, her elementary school, the Flag Grove Elementary School. It was built in 1889, and it was built by Anna Mae Bullock's great uncle. Her childhood one-room schoolhouse had been deteriorating badly. It was moved to the West Tennessee Delta Heritage Center in Brownsville, which is a close by little city, and it was restored and turned into the Tina Turner Museum. This is a picture of the schoolhouse now that has become the museum, and you see it's clad in white and its picket fence has been restored. The refurbished school holds artifacts that Tina personally donated to her hometown for it. Included are many things, including sequin designer outfits by Bob Mackie and Giorgio Armani that Tina would wear on her tours, and even the school desks that she sat in while she was a student there. She was not a great student. There are intimations several places and also in my love story that she was dyslexic. But again, she's growing up in a time when that doesn't have a name. No one understands it exactly, but it creates a problem with her learning. I think the desks are charming. She remembered that hometown, and she remembered it with love. She donated several of her gold records to the museum. During her career, she won 12 Grammys. She was voted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Ike in 1991, and then again as a solo artist in 2021. And in 2005, she received the Kennedy Center Honors. Quite the lady. Of special interest are a number of personal notes that were sent to Tina during her career that she also donated to the museum. One is this one. It concerns a personal note that Prince Charles at that time, today King Charles III, sent to her after he saw her. This is as it was explained in my love story. King Charles III, at the time the Prince of Wales, wrote a letter on Kensington Palace stationery gushing about seeing her. "It was a great pleasure to meet you," he wrote, underlining great. "I now find that I am gradually becoming something of an expert on the rock scene and can occasionally impress those who are considerably younger than me with my knowledge of some of the pop groups." During that memorial, which must have been a very sweet gathering, individuals sang hymns, and they lit 83 candles, one for each year of Anna Mae's life. And many of them shared their personal memories. Carolyn Flagg, the 83-year-old vice mayor of Brownsville, talked about their friendship, which began in the 9th grade. Tina had asked a young man to do a dance, not knowing that Flagg liked him too. And then she reminded everyone that Anna's favorite dance was the pony created by Chubby Checker. And she would perform, Tina would, as an entertainer, she would perform the pony even toward her last years. Her father and mother were interesting people in their own rights. And one of the reasons I think of survival when I think of Tina Turner is because I think that she survived a very real, continuing experience of abandonment by these parents. Her father, Floyd Richard Bullock, was an overseer of a number of sharecroppers, and he was physically abusive of his wife. Tina saw this as a child. The mother, Zelma Priscilla, was a homemaker, and she never really wanted Anna Mae. And she basically told the child this. She always played favorites with the other children. And Tina, in her book, talks openly about she would always be whipped and the others would not be. There were two siblings, two sisters. One was killed rather early, at an early age in a car wreck. The other one, Aline, continued to live and was part of Tina's life. Her childhood was chaotic. During World War II, the parents left and put Tina with grandparents in Knoxville. Then after the war, the parents sort of got back together, but then Tina's mother left Tina's father because of that abuse. When she was 13, her father remarried and abandoned Tina and her sister. Her mother also remarried and abandoned the children, and so Tina lived with her grandmother and worked as a domestic while she tried to get an education. So you see here, this is not a steady, loving childhood. This is a bouncing from pillar to post, from grandparent to grandparent, from one parent to the other parent. Never a sense of security. And it ingrained in Tina Turner a sense that she must always take care because everything she loved would abandon her at some point. When she was 16, her life took a positive turn. 1956, her grandmother died. That's not the positive part. But it meant that she had to move to Missouri to live with her mother, who's the only one sort of left for her to live with. That also is not the good thing. The good thing, the turning point, is that she enrolled in an amazing school. It's called Sumner High School, and she enrolled as a junior, and she wanted, at that point, to be a nurse. This is a picture from her yearbook, and she's quite a lovely young girl. She lists herself as Ann Bullock. And notice in this yearbook picture, which is her senior yearbook picture, it says she's going to be an entertainer. That was in 1958, and she was certain now that she would someday be an entertainer. This is a picture of the outside of Sumner High School. It's in St. Louis. It was the first high school for African Americans west of the Mississippi River, and it opened in 1875. It was known for its superb faculty, which focused on empowering the students to overcome challenges and to achieve despite odds that seemed to be built in. It made all the difference for Tina Turner as an adult. The next part of Tina's life is the part that most people are sort of familiar with, and that's her time with Ike Turner. This was, for me, watching her live, it was an exercise in survival. They met in East St. Louis at a club called the Manhattan Club. She was 17 and Ike was 25. Her sister was dating a member of Ike's band, the Kings of Rhythm, and so, took her little sister along to watch him perform. That's where the entertainment bug really hit Tina. When she was a senior in high school, she began dating one of the saxophonists in the Kings of Rhythm, one of Ike's saxophonists. His name was Raymond Hill. She gave birth to Hill's son, Raymond Craig, in 1958. It was 57 when Ike noticed her. He was aware that she was in the audience. And then he had a habit when he was performing of offering the microphone to anyone in the audience who'd like to come up and sing. And so one night, Tina accepted the microphone challenge and she got up and she sang with his band. She sang B.B. King's classic, You Know I Love You. Ike asked her to join the Kings of Rhythm as his female vocalist shortly after. In 1959, they began dating, and soon after, Tina was pregnant. In July of 1960, the two released their first single, A Fool in Love. Ike then renamed Anna Mae Tina Turner. He came up with her name, and he did something very bold. He copyrighted her stage name for his own. That record sold over 1 million copies. Ike Turner was a complete control freak. He got top billing even if all he did was strum a guitar. She's out there singing her heart out, but it's going to be the Ike and Tina Turner show. He selected and named the backup singers. He called them the Ikeettes. He picked what they would sing. He picked what they would wear. Every detail about the performance was Ike's decision. This is a portrait taken of them in 1972 with their 4 sons. It's a blended family. Ike had 2 sons from a previous marriage. They're the 2 older boys here. Tina's son with Ike's former band member, and then Raymond Craig, their biological child, together. In my love story, Tina shared that she knew that the relationship with Ike was doomed the moment Ike Turner realized that she could make money for him. She said, "He wanted to control me. He needed to control me economically and psychologically so that I would never leave him." She writes, "Ike Turner threw hot coffee in my face, giving me third-degree burns. He used my nose as a punching bag so many times that I could taste blood running down my throat when I sang. He broke my jaw, and I couldn't remember what it was like not to have a black eye." And all the time, she's singing with him, and no one guesses. She tried to escape at one point through suicide, quite frankly. And she's very, very honest about this in Love Story. She told her doctor she was having trouble sleeping, and so he gave her a prescription for sleeping pills, and she took 50 of them all at once and then went on stage to sing. She thought she would die doing the thing that she loved the most. In her book, she writes, "When I took those pills, I chose death, and I chose it honestly. I was unhappy when I woke up, but I came out of the darkness believing I was meant to survive. In July of 1976, the two of them were on their way to do a show in Dallas, and they got into a horrific fight. This time, for the first time, Tina physically fought back. Later, she fled their hotel room, carrying with her 36 cents and a mobile credit card. She hid in a friend's house, several homes, until she could file for divorce a little later that month. And she filed using irreconcilable differences as her reason. You know, in divorce, you're supposed to get, things are divided and so forth. They weren't all that divided for Tina. She got 2 cars, but she fought for one more thing. No money, no house, one more thing. The one more thing, she wanted the rights to the name Tina Turner. That was her stage name, and that was how she wanted to be known. She became one of the first women performers to come forward and tell her story of the abuse that she had suffered. Once she started talking about it, she gradually became a beacon of hope to abused women everywhere. She continued to be that until, and frankly, even after her death. She told Vanity Fair in an HBO documentary in 2021, 2 years before her death, "I wanted to stop people from thinking that Ike and Tina was so positive, that we were such a great team. So I thought, if nothing else, at least people will know the truth." And that's why she wrote about it. You know, Tina Turner comes out of a horribly abusive relationship, married to a control freak who was also abusive. And she's got to find Tina Turner. She's been completely submerged under this guise of a marriage and so forth. And remember, I told you earlier that as a child, she had been conditioned to expect abandonment. And so her act of abandoning Ike Turner was a bold move psychologically for her to make. She got out of there, and she had her name, she had her reputation, which was really very good, and she had more courage than most people would have. And with those 3 things, in her 40s, she recreates herself. This time, she's a solo artist. This time, she's going to channel the inner rage that she feels into the way she sings her songs. And the result is she beats the odds, and she becomes a middle-aged rock and roll sensation who looks hotter and better than women half her age. Daphne Brooks in The Guardian wrote a fascinating piece. I would encourage you to look it up. It's called Tina Turner, The Making of a Rock and Roll Revolutionary. And in it, she writes this: Tina Turner was a giant of the decade that brought us sky-high L-net hairdos, dazzling arena pop. Her swagger, her sensuality, her gravelly vocals, and unstoppable energy were her trademarks and still evoke the kind of euphoria that remains synonymous with rock and roll. Yet in the mid-1980s, the onset of her second wind as a solo artist, she was also making history, executing these bold moves as a middle-aged African-American female entertainer who had overcome severe personal and professional obstacles to reach the top. She was cover girl in October of 1984 of Rolling Stone magazine. Here it is, and she doesn't look like most 44-year-olds, I think. I love the name of the story about her in there is Tina Turner, She's Got Legs. She surely did. They went forever, I think. Her 1984 album, Private Dancer, had in it, as probably the best of all the songs, What's Love Got to Do with It? That song won, or the album won a Grammy Award for Record of the Year, and the song was named as her first and only #1 song on the Billboard Hot 100. At 44 years old, she became the oldest female solo artist to ever top the Hot 100. Here she is accepting the Grammy the year. It's the 27th Grammy Awards that were held in 1985, and she looks pretty good for 44. Tina embarked on a number of tours. There were several that were, I think, more outstanding than the others. One was the Break Every Rule World Tour. This was from late 1987 to early 1988. It became the top grossing tour by a female artist during the whole of the 1980s. At the time, it set a Guinness World Record for the largest paying audience in concert, with 180,000 attending. She tried her hand at movies, and it turned out she was a good actress. Probably in both instances, she was hired more for her singing ability, and they thought she could act some. It turned out she could act pretty well. The two films, one was in 1975, the other was in 1985. The one in 1975 was Tommy, the rock opera that The Who had produced. That was the one that she surprisingly got permission from Ike Turner to go and do. And then the other was the 1985 one, Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome. As she worked her way up to the top and became a very, very, very fan favorite entertainer, she was embraced by the music industry. She had paid her dues, and she was gaining the respect of the other performers. This is a picture of her in 1981 with the Rolling Stones. She admitted just a short time before her passing in 2023 that she'd always had a major crush on Mick Jagger, but had never followed through with it. 1985, Cher became one of the strongest proponents for her, and of course, it's because Sonny and Cher had had a very similar relationship to Ike and Tina Turner. Sonny always was the top billing. Sonny selected what they were going to do, and Cher was just kind of the quieter other half. Now, I'm not suggesting that Sonny Bono was the kind of abusive husband physically that Ike Turner was. But I will say it's clear that when Cher left him, she too became a different person. 1995, Lionel Richie took her under his wing and did some performances with her. He was very popular, she was very popular, and they made good music together. 1986, one of her favorite things was performing with Paul McCartney of the Beatles fame. In 1986, he's considerably younger, as you can see in this picture, and she's rocking and rolling away, and she doesn't look like a 50-something either. In 1989, David Bowie and she became particularly close because Bowie asked to record one of the songs that Tina had written. And she makes the comment in My Love Story that Bowie was very important to her because he helped her to understand that her talent was real and genuine and that it had nothing to do with her childhood or with Ike Turner. In 2005, one of the events that she cherished the most was when she was named for the Kennedy Center Honors by President George Bush. This is a photograph of all the ones who were honored that day with the President and Mrs. Bush. Honored with Tina were Robert Redford, Tony Bennett, Julie Harris, and ballerina Suzanne Farrell. Quite a moment for a little girl named Anna Mae Bullock from Nutbush, Tennessee. Tina Turner had accomplished what many would have considered impossible. She had come from an impoverished difficult childhood. She had gotten an education, enough from the right school at the right time with the right faculty to instill in her the belief that she could do things. She had survived a terribly abusive marriage. And then in her mid-40s, she had turned herself into a rock and roll star in her own right. And she did this for several decades, selling out concerts, having #1 records, gold records, platinum records. She did everything. But there comes a time in one's life when one begins thinking, what now? In an interview, she said, "Some people say the life that I've lived and the performances I gave, that appreciation is lasting with people, and I should be proud of that. I am. But when do you stop being proud? How do you bow out slowly and just go away?" She went away for about 10 years, said she was not going to tour again. But then when it came time, the 50th anniversary rolled around of the first time she ever took a stage with a mic with Ike Turner. She decided to do one last tour, and she called it her 50th anniversary tour. It was her 11th one and the final concert tour that she was going to do. It began on October the 1st, 2008, and it concluded May 5th, 2009. And shortly thereafter, she would celebrate her 70th birthday. I love this poster of her live in concert. She doesn't look like a 70-year-old either. Tina had won 12 Grammy Awards, including 4 for her breakthrough album, Private Dancer. The others were for the hit singles, What's Love Got to Do with It?, the soundtrack of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, Back Where You Started, Tina Live in Europe, and River, the Joni Letters. She was a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, not once, but twice. Her recordings, River Deep, Mountain High, Proud Mary, and What's Love Got to Do with It, are all in the Grammy Hall of Fame. And in 2018, she received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. She had announced her retirement from show business in 2000, but she came back for that 50th anniversary tour a decade later. There was something else going on in her life, and it was something that she never expected. It was something that she didn't believe she was capable of. And it was something that she took her sweet time in deciding how she would handle it. She was in love. Erwin Bach was 16 years younger than she. When they met, he was 30 and she was 46. They met at the Cologne airport because her business manager asked Bach to pick her up at the airport for him as a favor. She wrote in My Love Story, "The day I first met Erwin at an airport in Germany, I should have been too tired from my flight, too preoccupied with thoughts of my concert tour, and in too much of a hurry to get to my hotel to pay much attention to the young music executive who came from my record company to welcome me. But I did notice him, and I instantly felt an emotional connection." They began dating. She invited him to come to the United States, to Nashville, to visit her. And then they dated for 27 years. This, I understand from my research, is not unusual for abused women. They cannot make that commitment often because they have had such a terrible experience. The psychological scars are too deep. In her 2020 self-help book, Happiness Becomes You, Tina credited Bach with teaching her how to, quote, "love without giving up who I am." And if you think back to that childhood and all that abandonment, who am I? Nobody wants me. And then you look to the time with Ike when it was all about Ike and I'm insignificant. No wonder she felt a connection with Bach, because he loved her like she was and didn't care, didn't need anything. He is an interesting person. He's a German music executive for EMI Records, which is a big recording group. He had worked with bands, Queen for one, Pink Floyd was another. His personal net worth, separate totally from Tina Turner, is $50 million. He first proposed to her very close to her 50th birthday in 1989. Her answer was, "I don't have an answer." She didn't tell him no. She didn't tell him no. It's yes, it's just kind of a maybe in there. He proposed again in 2012, and this time she said yes. In 2013, Tina and Bach were married, and the ceremony was held at their estate in Switzerland. They had bought it, I think, 15 or 16 years earlier. There were 200 friends and family invited. All the female guests she asked to wear white, and all the male guests were to be black tie. She said in her book, My Love Story, "I wanted the colors of the roses and my garden in Switzerland to be the focus, and I thought that classic black and white would be the way to do it." For herself, she had been to a couture show in Beijing that Giorgio Armani had done a year or so earlier, and she had fallen in love with a green taffeta and black tulle gown that he had designed. She bought it on the spot and said, "I don't know if I'll ever wear it, but I love that gown." And so when she accepted Bach's proposal, she knew immediately what she would wear at the wedding. This is a picture of the wedding party. Her longtime friend, probably the longest time female friend in Tina Turner's life, and also her manager, Rhonda Graham, was her maid of honor. Bach chose his brother, Georgiann, to be his best man. 4 young girls and 1 little boy were invited by Tina to be the flower girls and the ring bearer for the ceremony. And she had Armani design their little gowns too. This is a picture of the newlyweds as they're leaving the formal ceremony, and the joy is evident everywhere, and you can get a sense of just how happy everybody is to see this union. Over their years together, the 27 years that they dated exclusively, and then their marriage years, Bach helped Turner through a series of medical emergencies. All of those happened after they married. Just 3 months after their marriage, she had a stroke, and it took her some time to come back from that. Then a year after the stroke, she started suffering serious bouts of vertigo. 2016, she was diagnosed with intestinal cancer, and her kidneys began to fail. She had been diagnosed with high blood pressure somewhere during her touring years, and really didn't think anything of it. She did not understand that the high blood pressure would destroy the kidneys. She didn't know that. And by the time she found out, her kidneys were in failure. That was in 2016 when the kidneys began to fail. In 2017, Bach donated one of his kidneys to save her life. She passed away in May of 2023. She had made very few public appearances after the marriage, after the medical issues had come. This particular picture of her was taken, I believe, 3 years before her death, and you can already see some of the problems that come, fluid retention and so forth, with kidney dysfunction. Her publicist, Bernard Dougherty, said on the day of her death, "Tina Turner, the queen of rock and roll, died peacefully today at the age of 83 after a long illness in her home near Zurich, Switzerland. With her passing, the world loses a music legend and a role model. Bach was by her side when she died from natural causes, and she died in their home, which was that 10-building, $76 million compound in Switzerland that they had bought some years earlier. As you would imagine, tributes were left not only in Switzerland at her home there, but also in the United States at places associated with her and with her performing years. This is a picture of one in Switzerland, and I loved it because there's the little note. You see the candles and the flowers, but then there's the little note, "You're simply the best." She was. You know, if you think about her and think about all that she went through, all that she endured, all that she overcame, I mean, you just have to admire her. I certainly do. I would like to have known her. And I know there are literally thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of abused women out there who appreciate more than Tina Turner ever knew how her taking her bold step gave them the courage to do the same.
You're simply the